Time now for our weekly chat with property commentator Ashley Church, and it was definitely a big surprise there, Ashley, from the government yesterday. What we all thought was going to be a capital gains tax, no tax at all.
Oh, absolutely delighted. I mean, the effects of that, both politically and economically, would have been disastrous. So I'm not particularly a supporter of Winston Peters or knighthoods, but a rise Sir Winston, frankly, as a result of this.
Okay, it's only 6:20. How much sleep have you had this morning, Ashley?
A little bit.
Because there will be some people disappointed with this. You know, perhaps millennials might have thought that a long-term plan would have seen a capital gains tax put in place.
Oh, yeah, look, I think that was a naive approach when you looked at the bigger issues around this and the impact that it was likely to have on the industry overall, and particularly what it would have done to provision of rental property across the country. This is the right decision.
Okay. If putting the capital gains tax to one side,
sure,
you think there's another sort of benefit that the government may introduce that could, because part of the problem with capital gains tax was that people were saying it's driving lower income earners out of being able to get on a foothold into the property market, but you think there's another way around this? Oh,
look, I'm not sure whether this is something that would actually happen, but it's certainly an idea based on history. So I was on the show a couple of weeks back, Anne, or 3 or 4 weeks ago, talking about the rate of home ownership in this country, which had been consistent at about 65% for nearly 100 years, except that it had increased to 73.8% in the 90s. And I got contacted by a couple of people after the show reminding me that one of the reasons for that was that we used to have a thing between 1945 and 1986 called the family benefit. Now, the family benefit was basically an amount that was paid per week, per child, to the mum in the family. It started out in 1945 at about 4 shillings per week, which was about 40 cents, increased in the 60s to $6 per week per child, which was all paid to the mother. Now, the reason I mention that is because in the 60s, which is the decade in which I was born, back in the olden days, there was a piece of legislation passed called the Family Benefit Home Ownership Act, and what that did was it said not only did you get paid the family benefit, but you could actually capitalise it, which meant instead of getting it paid per week, you could, for any particular child, you could get that paid as a capital amount for the entire life of the child up to the age of 16. And so for one child, if you took that at birth, took it to 16, that was worth about $4,992, although it was capped at $4,000. Now, why that's important, and you had to apply it to purchasing a home. Now, why that's important is that tens of thousands of Kiwis took advantage of that. They capitalised their family benefit, and they took it and they put it as a deposit on a home. Included in that were my mum and dad, who in 1970 built a house in the new suburb of Puramai in Napier, and used the capitalised family benefit. Now, interesting looking at those numbers, because my mum's getting on now. She's over 80, so memory's not what it was. Love you to bits, Mum, but it isn't. She tells me that house that they built was worth, it cost them around $15,000 for land and construction, which would be about $250,000 today. So she tells me that basically that capitalised family benefit was the difference between being able to purchase a house and not purchase a house, and that was true of tens of thousands of people throughout the country.
Just quickly though, Ashley, because families have changed markedly in their makeup now, we don't really have, I wouldn't consider a nuclear unit as such would be the standard anymore. There's a huge variety in the way people make up their families and therefore home ownership, and we do already have quite a few different benefits and schemes that can help you into home ownership. I know there's a lot that needs to be done, but do you really think that's going to be the answer?
Well, here's the thing. See, what's changed was that scheme worked regardless of your family unit, and it could be applied to the current situation. What changed, though, was in the 80s, the government basically did away with capitalisation, and the reason for that was because they moved from family benefit to something called family support, which is now called Working for Families, and that was actually, in some respects, that was a better scheme because it was based on eligibility rather than just giving it to everybody as it was with the family benefit. The problem with that is it meant that your eligibility could change in and out over the lifetime of your child, which meant that you could no longer capitalise it because you didn't know if somebody was going to be eligible at any particular time. And the problem is that short of going back to a universal program, it would be difficult to duplicate that. But you could do it. And one way you could do it is you could simply say, look, you can capitalise your family support or you're working for families over the lifetime of your child till they turn 18. But in any year that you don't qualify for family support, you would need to pay back the portion of that capitalisation that related to that year. So just to give you a quick number, if it was 50 grand over 18 years and you didn't qualify in any particular year, then you'd need to pay back $2,700.
Owing the government a wee bit of money there. Hey,
That's
Ashley
right.
Church, thank you very much for your time this morning.
No problem.
Ashley's a happy man. He's walking on here this morning. We want to know what you think of the government's decision to scrap the proposed capital gains tax this morning. Were you surprised?
Yeah, I really was, because we had Jacinda in earlier in the week and she said there was an announcement coming in April, and I thought, okay, well, if you're taking your time over it, this means you're considering the options long term for people who are under the age of 40 and how we might look for the next 50 years.
What about those over the age of 40? Daniel, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, no surprise.
I was going to say 50, but I've gone down this path.
No surprise from me. I
Really?
campaigned long and hard.
Oh, here we go.
Capital gains tax was the wrong move by this government, and obviously it shows that what Winston wants, Winston will get, and he's a big supporter.
It just annoys me. I'm infuriated.
That is a
by it.
coalition government.
Are you suggesting that Ashley Church got it wrong and it should be you getting...
Arise, Sir Daniel. No, not at all.
You're considering that family benefit, claiming it all your kids.
But I think many Kiwis out there too believe that hard-working Kiwis shouldn't be punished.
But you're not being punished. You haven't.
Oh, I can't.
I'm not.
I can't bear to
not
go
being
down this again.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's... look, Daniel, you have every right to be very pleased this morning because, as you say, you alone campaigned
Just
long
you.
and hard.
You alone.
Lone voice.
You can have your say by going to our Facebook page this morning, Breakfast on One, or you can email us, breakfast@tvnz.co.nz. Are you happy the government scrapped the capital gains tax?